The summer air in Qatar was thick with heat, the kind that clings to the skin and makes even the brightest lights of the city feel heavy. The world was watching. It was the World Cup, a stage where legends are made, and Cristiano Ronaldo had arrived, poised to etch his name once more into football history. But from the moment his plane touched down, something about this tour felt different. The cameras captured his confident stride, the waving of hands, the flashes of smiles. To the public eye, everything seemed normal. But those close enough to feel the atmosphere around him noticed the tension, an invisible weight that seemed to hang over him, like a shadow that refused to be shaken off. At the airport, thousands cheered, chanting his name. Yet, amidst the crowd, Ronaldo's eyes caught something odd. A man, dressed in black, stood still among the frenzy. No flag, no phone raised for photos, no expression. Just two unblinking eyes, fixed on him. Ronaldo looked again, but before his security detail could notice, the man vanished into the swarm of fans, swallowed by the chaos. The team bus waited. The Portuguese squad climbed aboard, the energy electric with hope and ambition. But as Ronaldo took his seat by the window, his thoughts lingered on the figure in black. Something about the man's stare had pierced him, leaving behind a trace of unease that refused to fade. By the time they reached the hotel, the sun had set, and Doha's skyline glittered against the desert night. The hotel chosen for the team was fortress-like, layers of glass and steel, guarded at every entrance. A place meant to keep the world out, to shield the players from distractions. Yet, no fortress is without cracks. As Ronaldo stepped into the lobby, the echo of footsteps followed him a second too long. He turned sharply, but saw only teammates laughing, coaches talking, journalists flashing cameras. Again, the moment passed. And again, the feeling remained. The hotel suite was lavish, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble floors reflecting the golden lights, and a silence so deep it seemed unnatural. Ronaldo placed his bags down, took a deep breath, and tried to shake the unease from his mind. Tomorrow would be the start of something historic, he reminded himself. Tomorrow was about football. But as midnight approached, he found himself standing at the window, gazing into the endless desert beyond the city lights. That's when he saw it again. Down on the street, near the shadows of the palm trees, stood a single figure, dressed in black, motionless, looking up. Directly at him, Ronaldo blinked, his heart skipping. When he looked again, the figure was gone. For the first time in his career, the man who had conquered stadiums and silenced doubters felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The night passed slowly. Dreams plagued his sleep, dreams of empty stadiums, broken trophies, and voices whispering his name in the dark. He woke in a cold sweat, the sheets tangled, the silence pressing against his chest. The next morning, the Portuguese squad gathered for training. Laughter returned, footballs rolled across the grass, and cameras clicked endlessly. Yet, even here, Ronaldo couldn't shake the sense of being watched. And then it happened again. As he prepared to take a free kick during training, he glanced at the stands. Empty except for one figure. Dressed in black. The same eyes. The same stare. And in that moment, the ball slipped under his boot, something unthinkable for him. His teammates laughed it off, but Ronaldo didn't. Because he knew. He was not alone. The World Cup had begun. But so had something else. Something darker. The day after training, the Portuguese squad returned to their fortress-like hotel. Cameras flashed outside, fans screamed for autographs, and journalists shoved microphones forward, desperate for a soundbite. For most players, it was routine, but for Ronaldo, every step felt heavier than the last. The memory of the figure in black lingered, gnawing at his mind like a splinter he couldn't remove. Inside the hotel, security was strict. No fan, no journalist, no outsider could breach the marble walls and tinted glass. But Ronaldo knew better. Security keeps away the visible threats. It cannot guard against the unseen ones. The evening was quiet. Teammates gathered in the lounge, some playing cards, others scrolling through their phones. Ronaldo excused himself early, retreating to his suite. He needed rest, but the silence of the room unsettled him more than the noise outside ever could. As he lay on the bed, his phone buzzed. A message. No name, just an unknown number. He is waiting. Ronaldo froze. He stared at the words, his chest tightening. Who is waiting? And more importantly, how did this message reach him? Players' numbers were kept private, guarded from the media. He deleted the message, convincing himself it was spam. But the unease returned, worse than before. He turned off his phone and tried to sleep. That's when the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like a draft sneaking through the cracks of the window. Then clearer. A murmur of voices, hushed, conspiratorial. He sat up, straining his ears. The sound wasn't coming from outside, it was inside the walls. He pressed his ear against the marble. And there it was. Two distinct voices. One sharp, commanding. The other trembling, almost pleading. He doesn't know yet. The cup, cursed. Just like the others, Ronaldo's blood ran cold. He stepped back, heart hammering. He wanted to believe it was his imagination, but the voices continued, drifting in and out like waves against stone. Suddenly, silence. And then 3 knocks. Slow. Heavy. On his door. Ronaldo's heart skipped. He glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. No one should be there. Carefully, he approached, peering through the peephole. The hallway was empty. He backed away, his pulse racing. But just as he turned, he noticed something. Under his door, a thin sheet of paper had been slid inside. He picked it up with trembling hands. No signature, no explanation. Just 4 words, written in jagged ink. The curse follows you. His breath caught in his throat. He read the words again and again, his mind spinning. Curse? What curse? Was this a prank? Or something more sinister? The next morning, he tried to carry on as normal. At breakfast, he laughed with teammates, posed for photos, and nodded at reporters' questions. But inside, his thoughts raced. Should he tell someone? The coach? Security? Or would they dismiss it as paranoia? Still, he couldn't ignore what happened. And as if to confirm his fears, during training that day, another incident unfolded. Ronaldo opened his locker to change into his gear. His jersey was missing. The number 7 shirt, his armor, his symbol, was gone. In its place was a folded scrap of paper. He unfolded it with dread. Inside was the same jagged handwriting. Piece by piece, it begins. His pulse quickened. The jersey wasn't just cloth. It was part of him, his identity. To have it stolen, replaced with a message, meant someone was inside his circle. Someone close enough to touch his world without being seen. Whispers. Notes. Disappearances. The walls of safety were crumbling. That night, he barely slept. Every sound, every creak, every gust of wind against the window felt like a threat. The figure in black haunted his mind, standing motionless under the desert moonlight. The voices echoed in his ears. And then, just before dawn, Ronaldo swore he heard it again. Whispering, not through the walls this time, but inside his room. Morning came with a cruel brightness. The desert sun spilled through the curtains, painting the suite in gold, yet Ronaldo felt no warmth. The memory of the whispers still gnawed at him, and the paper in his locker, the words written in jagged ink, burned in his mind. The missing jersey was no small thing. To the world, it was only a piece of cloth. But to Ronaldo, it was his identity, his symbol of battle, his second skin. Whoever took it wasn't just playing a prank, they were sending a message. Training began like any other day. The Portuguese squad ran drills, practiced set pieces, and tested formations. Ronaldo tried to focus, but his eyes constantly drifted toward the edges of the pitch. Every shadow seemed longer, every figure in the distance sharper. And then, during a water break, he noticed something. One of the kit staff was carrying a bag of laundry, shirts, shorts, socks. Normal, except that dangling from the side was a glimpse of white fabric. His jersey. The number 7. Ronaldo's pulse spiked. He hurried toward the man, but before he could speak, the bag slipped. The jersey fell to the grass, dirty and torn as though dragged across the ground. The kit man swore under his breath, scooping it up quickly. Sorry, Mr. Ronaldo, I don't know how this happened." His eyes darted nervously, his voice too quick. Ronaldo stared at the shirt. It wasn't just dirty, it was marked. Across the back, faint but visible, someone had drawn a line. A slash. As if cutting through his number. He snatched it from the man's hands, his jaw tightening. But before he could demand an explanation, a whistle blew. Training resumed. The coach waved him over. And the kit man vanished, slipping into the tunnels, never to be seen again that day. By the evening, the incident had spread in whispers among the squad. Some players joked about curses, others dismissed it as an accident. But Ronaldo knew better. Too many coincidences. Too many shadows. That night, he placed the torn jersey on the table in his room. He stared at it for hours, as though the fabric itself might reveal a secret. Midnight crept closer. The city outside slept. The silence thickened. And then knock, knock, knock. The sound froze him. He turned toward the door, every muscle tense. Again, 3 slow knocks. Deliberate. Echoing. He approached carefully, his breath shallow. Through the peephole, nothing. Just the empty hallway. But when he looked down, he saw it. Another slip of paper. He picked it up, hands trembling. Same jagged handwriting. You can't run from what's written. The words struck him like ice. Written? What did that mean? Destiny? Fate? Or something darker? He set the note beside the jersey, the 2 artifacts of this growing nightmare. And then, determined to shake the fear, he left the room. The hotel corridors were dimly lit, quiet except for the distant hum of air conditioning. He walked slowly, listening. Searching. He needed to know if this was real or madness. And then he heard it again. The whispers. Not through walls this time. Not in dreams. But ahead, around the corner. He crept forward, heart pounding. The whispers grew louder, clearer. A language he couldn't fully grasp, words slipping in and out of sense. And then he saw them. 2 men. Dressed in black. Standing under the faint glow of an emergency light. One held a folded paper, the other nodded solemnly. The curse of the cup, he carries it now. The words froze him. Before he could react, the men turned their heads. Their eyes locked on him. Cold. Unblinking. And, just like that, they were gone. The hallway empty. No trace. No sound. Ronaldo staggered back, pressing against the wall. His chest heaved, his mind racing. Had he imagined it? Were they ghosts? Or something flesh and blood? He rushed back to his suite, slamming the door shut. He locked it, bolted it, pushed a chair against the handle. And then, in the stillness, he looked at the jersey again. The slash across the number. The jagged notes. The whispers. Piece by piece, the mystery was tightening around him. The World Cup wasn't just a tournament anymore. It was a trap. The stadium was alive. Tens of thousands of fans roared in unison, flags waving, drums pounding, a sea of color and sound unlike anything else on Earth. For most players, the energy was intoxicating. For Ronaldo, it was suffocating. The match had begun, Portugal against their first group stage rival. Cameras zoomed in on every step he took, every flick of his boots, every twitch of his jaw. The world was watching. Yet, as he jogged across the pitch, Ronaldo's focus wasn't on the game. It was on the stands. Among the blur of faces, one figure stood out. Black clothing. Still posture. Cold eyes. The same man from the airport. The same shadow from the hotel window. He was here, in the heart of the stadium, unblinking, unmoving, as though he belonged to another world. Ronaldo's stomach tightened. He tried to shake it off, forcing his mind back to the match. The ball zipped toward him, his instincts took over, and he delivered a perfect first touch. The crowd roared. But when he glanced back, yes, The figure was still there, watching. Minutes passed. The game continued. Ronaldo sprinted, tackled, passed, but every break, every pause, he scanned the crowd. The man never moved. Not a cheer, not a gesture, just silent observation. By halftime, Portugal led. The players returned to the locker room, their faces glowing with sweat and adrenaline. Laughter echoed, coaches shouted encouragement, water bottles snapped open. But Ronaldo sat alone, his mind elsewhere. Bruno leaned over. "You all right, Chris?" Ronaldo nodded stiffly. "Fine." He didn't dare explain. Who would believe him? When the second half began, the crowd roared louder than before. Yet Ronaldo felt only dread. For now, there wasn't just one figure. There were two, opposite sides of the stadium. Identical posture, identical clothing. Both staring at him. The whistle blew. Play resumed. But Ronaldo's movements grew sharper, rushed, distracted. He missed a pass. Then another. The commentators noticed. The crowd murmured. Something was wrong. And then, in the 73rd minute, as he lined up for a corner kick, he saw it. The figure closest to him lifted a hand. Slowly. Deliberately. And in that hand was something glinting. A small, metallic object. Ronaldo froze. His chest pounded. Was it a weapon? A signal? A warning? Before he could react, the ball was kicked, play continued, and the figure lowered his hand, disappearing into the crowd as if swallowed by shadows. By full time, Portugal had won. The fans erupted in joy. Teammates celebrated, hugging, shouting, laughing. But Ronaldo stood frozen on the pitch, scanning the stands. Both figures were gone. The cameras caught him staring, confusion etched on his face. The commentators wondered aloud, was he tired? Distracted? Injured? But none of them knew the truth. As he walked off the pitch, sweat dripping, the stadium still vibrating with celebration, he felt a slip of paper in his hand. He didn't know when it had been placed there, during the handshake line, maybe, or when the fans leaned over the barrier. He unfolded it. Same jagged handwriting. "We are closer than you think." Ronaldo's blood ran cold. The victory meant little to him. Portugal had secured 3 points, but for Ronaldo, the celebration was hollow. He returned to the hotel with his teammates, smiling for cameras, nodding at reporters, but inside, his thoughts churned like a storm. The note weighed on him. "We are closer than you think." Closer. The word echoed in his skull. Closer than the hotel gates? Closer than the locker room? Or closer than the very breath he took? By midnight, the halls of the hotel had fallen silent. The laughter of teammates faded, the staff retreated, and the fortress once again closed itself against the outside world. Ronaldo lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that never came. Then it began. Knock. 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 The sound was soft, deliberate, spaced with long pauses, as though whoever stood outside wanted him to feel every second of dread. He sat up, heart hammering. The digital clock glowed. 2:43 a.m. He moved slowly, bare feet against the cold marble floor, every step calculated. The knocks came again, 3 this time, heavier. At the door, he pressed his eye to the peephole. Empty. Just as before. But then movement. Something slid under the door. A shadow against the gap. He stepped back as a folded piece of paper touched the floor, pushed gently into the room. He waited, breath caught in his throat. The silence outside stretched unnaturally long, broken only by the hum of the air conditioner. Slowly, cautiously, he picked up the note. 4 words. The same jagged handwriting. Open the door, Cristiano. His blood froze. His name. This time, it was personal. They weren't addressing the number 7, the global superstar, the icon. They were addressing the man. He stood frozen, the paper trembling in his hands. Whoever it was, they knew where he slept. They knew his room. And they wanted him to open the door. Another knock. Harder this time. Bang. 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 The sound echoed down the corridor like a drumbeat of doom. Ronaldo stepped back, his instincts screaming not to open. But then his phone buzzed. A message. The same unknown number. If you don't open, we will. The threat was clear. His breath quickened, every muscle tensed. He considered calling security, but something deep inside told him it wouldn't matter. Whoever this was had already slipped through every layer of protection. The knock stopped. Silence. For a moment, he thought it was over. Relief threatened to wash over him. Until, click, the handle moved. Slowly, gently. Someone was testing it. Ronaldo's chest clenched. He grabbed the nearest object, a glass from the nightstand, holding it like a weapon, absurd as it seemed. His eyes locked on the door as the handle twitched again. Then nothing. Silence. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last. Finally, mustering courage, he edged forward and pressed his eye once more to the peephole. Empty. Hallway still. He exhaled, relief flooding his veins. Maybe they had left. Maybe it was another mind game. But when he stepped back into the room, his relief shattered. On the table, beside the torn jersey and previous notes, lay a new object. A black glove. One he had never seen before. One that hadn't been there minutes earlier. His hand trembled as he picked it up. The leather was cold, stiff, smelling faintly of dust. Inside, scrawled in white ink, were two words, "You're chosen." His breath caught, his mind spinning. Chosen for what? A curse? A fate? A punishment? The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. He dropped the glove as though it were poison, backing away until his shoulders hit the cold glass of the window. He stared into the night beyond, the desert stretching endlessly into the dark. And there, far below, he saw it again. The figure in black. Standing motionless. Looking up. Waiting. The midnight knock had ended. But the game had only just begun. Morning broke over Doha, flooding the city in light, but the weight of the night clung to Ronaldo like a second skin. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements stiff from a sleepless night. The glove still lay on the table, untouched, an omen he dared not discard but couldn't bring himself to keep close. Training came and went in a blur. He forced smiles for cameras, he went through the motions on the pitch, but his mind was elsewhere, haunted by knocks in the night, by whispers, by the figure staring up from the street. That evening, as the team returned to the hotel, Ronaldo moved through the lobby with a quiet urgency. He felt eyes on him constantly. Staff, guests, even teammates, anyone could be part of it. The game wasn't on the pitch anymore. It was here, in shadows, in silence, in every corner of his existence. When he entered his suite, he noticed something immediately. The air felt different. A faint scent, metallic, sharp, lingered. His bag had been shifted slightly. The curtains pulled an inch wider. Someone had been inside. With a cold dread, he began searching. He opened drawers, checked under the bed, inspected the wardrobe. Nothing. Until inside the Bible placed on the nightstand, he found it. A folded letter, hidden between the thin pages. He pulled it out slowly, his hands trembling. The handwriting was the same jagged scrawl, but this time, the message was longer. Cristiano, you chase trophies, but the cup you seek is not what it seems. Many before you carried it, many before you fell. Some vanished, some lost their glory, some lost their lives. Do you know the truth of those who lifted it before you? Look deeper. The cup does not reward, it curses. And now it has chosen you. His pulse pounded. He read the words again and again. The curse of the cup. A chilling legend whispered among fans, dismissed by most as superstition. But here, in his hands, it was written with certainty. Images raced through his mind. Players who rose to greatness only to fall abruptly. Careers destroyed, lives ended tragically after World Cup triumphs. Could it be coincidence? Or had there always been something darker at play? He thought of the glove, the notes, the vanishing jersey. And he realized this wasn't random torment. It was ritual. As the thought sank in, a sudden sound broke the silence. A faint thud against the window. He turned sharply. On the glass was a smear. Red. Like blood. Heart racing, he approached cautiously. Outside, 30 floors down, the city sprawled with lights. But at the base of the hotel, near the shadows of the street, he saw them. Figures. 3 now. Dressed in black. Standing still, staring up. He staggered back, clutching the letter in his hand. The red smear on the glass was not blood, it was paint, smeared deliberately, mocking him. The phone in his room rang suddenly, its shrill tone cutting the silence. He hesitated, then answered. Static hissed on the line, then a voice. Deep. Hollow. Whispering. It's not the cup you win, Cristiano. It's the cup that wins you. The line went dead. Ronaldo's hand trembled as he dropped the receiver. His breath came in ragged bursts. He felt trapped, a prisoner in luxury, surrounded by shadows closing in. That night, he tried again to sleep. But dreams tormented him, visions of lifting the World Cup only for it to turn to ash in his hands, of faceless figures surrounding him, chanting his name like a funeral dirge. When he awoke in the early hours, drenched in sweat, he found something on his bedside table. The hidden letter was gone. In its place lay a single black feather. The black feather rested on the nightstand, its presence more terrifying than the glove, more chilling than the letters. A symbol. A warning. Ronaldo didn't know its meaning, but he understood one thing clearly. Whoever was haunting him was no longer satisfied with whispers and shadows. They were declaring themselves. That morning, he carried the feather with him to breakfast, hidden in his palm, staring at it between bites of food he barely tasted. His teammates joked and bantered, oblivious. They didn't notice his silence, the stiffness in his movements, the way his eyes scanned the room as though expecting someone to leap out at any second. Later that day, during a team meeting, he found himself unable to focus on tactics or strategies. His mind kept replaying the words of the hidden letter, many before you fell. He thought of the greats who once lifted the trophy. Names filled his mind, each followed by tragedy, scandal, or downfall. Coincidence? Or pattern? That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the desert sky burned crimson, Ronaldo sat alone in his suite, scrolling through his phone. Searching. Past winners. Their fates. The deeper he dug, the more unsettling it became. Marriages ruined. Careers cut short. Injuries that ended legends. Deaths, young and unexpected. Always, in the years following World Cup glory, shadows fell. And then an article, buried deep. A story about a Brazilian striker who once whispered to reporters, "The cup isn't what you think it is. It takes more than it gives." Days later, that striker disappeared from the public eye. Some said injury. Others said madness. No one truly knew. Ronaldo set his phone down, his hand trembling. The curse was real. It had always been there, waiting for its next victim. And now it had chosen him. The night came heavy and silent. He sat by the window, staring out at the desert. For a time, the city lights comforted him. But then, as always, the figures appeared. This time, there were 4. 4 men in black. Standing apart, yet unified by their stillness. Staring up. Watching. Always watching. Suddenly, the lights in his room flickered. Once. Twice. Then darkness swallowed the suite. Ronaldo's breath caught. He scrambled in the dark, reaching for his phone, using its glow to light the space. The shadows danced across the walls. The silence deepened. And then voices. Not whispers through walls this time. Not distant murmurs. Clear, surrounding, echoing in his very room. The cup takes. The cup curses. The cup claims. He spun in circles, phone shaking in his hand, the light casting wild beams across the marble. No one was there. Yet the voices grew louder, overlapping, chanting. He clamped his hands over his ears, but the sound was inside him, vibrating in his chest, rattling his bones. Then, just as suddenly, silence. The lights flickered back on. And on the table where the feather had been, now stood a small replica of the World Cup trophy. golden, gleaming, but wrong. The surface was cracked, jagged lines running through it like scars. The faces engraved in the design were distorted, their mouths open as though screaming. Ronaldo staggered back, horror flooding his veins. His legs weakened, his breath shallow. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't coincidence. This was ritual. He approached slowly, against every instinct, and lifted the object. It was heavier than it should have been. The metal was cold, almost wet to the touch. At its base, carved into the gold, were words etched in the same jagged script as the letters. Glory is death. Victory is sacrifice. The replica slipped from his hands, crashing to the floor with a hollow thud. The sound echoed unnaturally long, bouncing through the room as though the walls themselves carried it. He backed away, his chest heaving. Fear consumed him, raw and primal. For the first time in his life, Cristiano Ronaldo, the man who had stared down the fiercest opponents, silenced the loudest critics, stood unshaken on the grandest stages, felt utterly powerless. And in that moment, he understood. The curse wasn't just a legend. It was alive. And it wanted him. The day of the semi-final arrived, and with it, a suffocating weight that pressed on Ronaldo's chest. The team bus rattled through the streets toward the stadium, players humming with nervous energy, music blasting, laughter cutting through the tension. But Ronaldo sat apart, his gaze fixed on the window, staring at the blur of cheering fans. He wasn't seeing them. He was seeing shadows. Always shadows. The night before, he hadn't slept. The twisted replica of the trophy still lay where it had fallen, gleaming mockingly from the corner of his suite. He hadn't touched it again. He couldn't. But he didn't need to. Its presence was enough, a reminder that the curse was with him, everywhere. As he stepped off the bus, the roar of the crowd surged like a wave, shaking the air. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, fans screamed his name. Normally, he would thrive on it. But now, every flash felt like lightning, every voice like a warning. In the locker room, the coach delivered his speech, fire in his words, urging them toward history. Teammates nodded, fists clenched, energy building. Ronaldo, though, felt detached, as if his body sat among them, but his spirit lingered elsewhere. The whistle blew. The match began. The stadium thundered with energy, every pass, every tackle, every near miss feeding the tension. Ronaldo moved across the pitch with precision, his instincts sharp, but inside, turmoil churned. Every time the ball touched his feet, he felt the weight of unseen eyes. Not the crowd's eyes, not the cameras, the shadows, the figures. Watching. Minutes turned to hours, sweat pouring, legs aching. The scoreline was tight, the match balanced on a knife's edge. And then it happened. The chance. The moment every player dreams of. A teammate threaded the ball through defenders, and suddenly, Ronaldo was free. The goal before him, the keeper bracing. Time slowed. The noise of the stadium dulled into silence. It was just him, the ball, and destiny. He struck. The ball curved, spinning with perfection, cutting through the air. The crowd rose, breaths held. And then a scream. Not from the stands. Not from the pitch. A scream in his head, sharp and piercing. He faltered. The ball veered just wide, slamming against the post. The stadium erupted in groans, gasps, disbelief. But Ronaldo barely heard. His ears rang with that scream. He turned. And there they were. The four men in black, standing at the edge of the pitch, beyond the advertising boards. Not celebrating, not moving. Just standing. Their faces pale, eyes locked on him. And in their hands, each held a black feather. Ronaldo stumbled backward, heart hammering. Teammates shouted at him, urging him to focus, to shake it off. But he couldn't. Moments later, the opposition struck. A counterattack. A goal. The scoreboard shifted. Ronaldo's team trailed. Panic spread like fire. Players scrambled, strategies crumbled. The curse had chosen its moment. The minutes bled away, each second a dagger. Ronaldo pushed harder, sprinting, striking, desperate. But the more he tried, the more the shadows clung. The whispers returned, seeping into his skull. Glory is death. Victory is sacrifice. In the dying moments of the game, another chance. A final opportunity. A cross sailed into the box, perfect. Ronaldo leapt, his body rising high, his head meeting the ball with thunderous force. The ball soared, time slowed again, until the keeper stretched, fingertips brushing, tipping it just over the bar. The whistle blew. It was over. Defeat. The stadium roared, half in joy, half in despair. Teammates collapsed, some in tears, some staring blankly. Ronaldo stood frozen, chest heaving, sweat dripping. His dream had shattered, not by lack of effort, but by something darker, something he could never name aloud. As he walked off the pitch, cameras trained on him, he saw it. At the tunnel's edge, the four figures stood again, waiting. One of them raised a hand, and in it gleamed the cracked golden replica of the World Cup trophy. Ronaldo's blood ran cold. His knees weakened. For a moment, he thought he might collapse right there, in front of the world. But he kept walking, head bowed, the weight of the curse pressing down on him. In the locker room, silence reigned. Teammates stared into the void, the air thick with grief. The coach tried to speak but stopped, words failing him. Ronaldo sat alone, drenched in sweat, staring at his trembling hands. He thought of the feather, the letters, the voices, the figures, the cracked trophy, and now defeat. The curse hadn't just haunted him, it had taken from him. And he knew deep down, this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The night after the crushing defeat, Ronaldo lay in his hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. The city outside should have been alive with celebration, fireworks splitting the sky, songs filling the streets. But for him, silence ruled. Heavy, suffocating silence. Sleep didn't come. His body ached, his mind replayed the match again and again. The missed shot, the scream, the figures. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them at the tunnel, holding that broken golden trophy. At 3 a.m., he heard it. A knock. Soft, deliberate, at his door. Ronaldo sat up, heart thudding. He waited. The knock came again. Louder this time. Reluctantly, he stood, crossed the room, and pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. Only silence stretched on both sides. He stepped out, looked left, then right. No one. But when he turned back toward his door, his chest tightened. There it was. Another black feather. Lying across the threshold. His breath caught. He bent down slowly, picking it up, the quill cold against his fingertips. And then he heard it, a whisper. So faint, it felt like it came from inside his own skull. The final price is yet to be paid. He dropped the feather instantly, stumbling back into his room, slamming the door shut. His pulse raced, sweat dripping down his temples. He pressed his back against the door, as though it might hold the shadows away. The whisper lingered. He turned to the mirror above the dresser. For a moment, it was his reflection staring back, tired eyes, sunken cheeks. But then it shifted. The reflection smiled. He didn't. The reflection leaned closer, whispering again, lips moving though no sound should have passed through glass. Sacrifice brings immortality. You were chosen, but you resist. Ronaldo staggered back, knocking over a lamp. Glass shattered, darkness swallowed the room, except for the faint glimmer of the cracked golden trophy in the corner. He couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed it. The moment his hands touched its surface, a shock surged through him, cold and electric, flooding his veins. His vision blurred, the room spinning. Shadows swarmed, crawling up the walls, clawing at him. He dropped to his knees, clutching the trophy, as voices filled the room in a deafening chorus. You were warned. You were chosen. You belong to us. And then silence. When he opened his eyes, dawn light seeped through the curtains. The shadows were gone. The voices gone. But the trophy still lay in his lap, cracked and gleaming faintly. Ronaldo rose slowly, legs trembling. He placed the trophy in his travel bag, zipped it shut, and stared out the window at the rising sun. He understood now. This wasn't about victory. It wasn't about football. It was about something older, darker, a deal he had never agreed to but was bound to nonetheless. The World Cup tour was over. But the curse had only tightened its grip. And somewhere deep inside, Ronaldo knew he could run, but he could never truly escape. Because the last whisper hadn't been a threat. It had been a promise. The flight home was long, heavy with silence. His teammates tried to joke, to bury the pain of defeat, but Ronaldo sat apart, a hood pulled low, the travel bag with the cracked trophy never leaving his side. Every hour, he swore he felt it move inside the bag, as though it were breathing. When the plane landed, the cameras flashed, the reporters screamed his name, but to Ronaldo, their faces blurred, their voices twisted into whispers. The world thought he was defeated, broken by the tournament. But inside, he carried something far darker than loss. That night, in the privacy of his home, he finally unzipped the bag. The trophy gleamed under the dim light, the crack across its surface glowing faintly as if alive. His hands trembled as he lifted it out. The air in the room grew heavier, colder, as though time itself slowed. And then it spoke. Not with words, but with memory. Images poured into his mind, every champion who had ever held the cup. Men who rose to glory only to vanish, their careers ending in tragedy, their lives consumed by shadows. The legends, the heroes, each had carried the curse. He saw Maradona clutching his chest, whispering in empty corridors. He saw players crying in hotel rooms, staring into mirrors that smiled back. He saw the black feathers, always the black feathers. The cup was no prize. It was a chain. A golden shackle passed from one player to the next. Glory was the bait, immortality the illusion, and the price, suffering, torment, the slow theft of one's soul. Ronaldo dropped the trophy, staggering back, gasping for air. The voices swelled again, echoing through the walls. You carry us now. You belong. Forever. He pressed his hands over his ears, screaming. But the whispers burrowed deeper, into his mind, into his bones. He grabbed the trophy again, desperate to destroy it, and hurled it against the wall. It didn't break. Instead, the crack spread wider, revealing not hollow gold, but something black beneath. Something pulsing. Something alive. His heart stopped. He understood now. The cup wasn't a trophy at all. It was a vessel. A prison. A tomb. And by lifting it, he had opened the door. A shadow uncoiled from the widening crack, filling the room like smoke, wrapping around him. He struggled, clawed at the darkness, but it seeped into his skin, his mouth, his eyes. He felt his knees, body convulsing, breath shallow. Then silence. When the lights flickered back, Ronaldo stood still. His eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly gold, reflecting the cracked trophy on the floor. His lips curved into a smile that wasn't his. Somewhere deep inside, the last of him screamed, but no one would ever hear it. Because the legend of Ronaldo wasn't ending. It was beginning anew, shaped, twisted, claimed by the same curse that had haunted champions for generations. And the world would never